أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ثم الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه الأخيار أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. We continue with our studies on التحفة السنية بشرح المقدمة الآجرومية, and our topic will be the الأفعال وأنواعها. الأفعال وأنواعها. Yes, sure. Okay. We are going to look at the الفعل الماضي, الفعل المضارع, then we look at فعل الأمر, then we look at their أحكام, their rulings. He says الأفعال وأنواعها, the verbs and their types. It says الأفعال ثلاثة. As I said, if you had done the النحو الواضح, most of these things will be a top-up. Some lessons you just pick some petty things, some will be also revision for you. Jamil. It says الأفعال ثلاثة ماض ومضارع وأمر نحو ضرب ويضرب واضرب. Verbs are in three types: ماض, مضارع, and أمر. And he gives example for the ماضي ضرب, for the مضارع يضرب, for the أمر اضرب. It says ينقسم الفعل إلى ثلاثة أقسام. القسم الأول, most of this will be just quick readings and we will explain where it's necessary. It says الفعل الماضي وهو فعل يدل على حدوث عمل في الزمن الماضي نحو ضرب, هرب, سافر, ذهب. It says الفعل الماضي, as the definition we've seen it a couple of times. When we say فعل الماضي, it is the verb that shows the occurrence of an action in a past time. Says القسم الثاني, the second partition of or category of verbs, الفعل المضارع وهو فعل يدل على حدوث عمل في الزمن الحاضر أو المستقبل نحو يضرب, يعود, ينصر, سيذهب. Says the second group of verbs are the فعل المضارع, which shows the occurrence of an action now, الزمن الحاضر, now, أو المستقبل, or the future. So we use the فعل المضارع as well to serve the future tense when we need such. So in the examples he gives you the يضرب, يعود, ينصر, they are all فعل مضارع. Then he brings سيذهب. You know the فعل المضارع, if you attach sin فتحة to it or سوف to the فعل المضارع, it pushes it into the future. So سيذهب will mean he will go, he will go. That is our future tense. Then he says القسم الثلاثة, the third group of verb, فعل الأمر, the فعل الأمر, that is the imperative verb or the command verb. وهو فعل يطلب به من المخاطب القيام بعمل ما في المستقبل. It is the type of verb that is used to request from the second person to do some action. It is used to request from the second person to do something. في المستقبل, in the future, because when I speak, by that time you hadn't done what I'm commanding you to do. You will only do what I'm commanding you to do after I've spoken. So في زمن المستقبل, ما في المستقبل. جميل. نحو اذهب, اضرب, اكتب. These are all imperative verbs. These things are all things that we are much familiar with. We want to quickly look at the أحكام. That is what we need mostly in these lessons. It says أحكام الفعل, the rulings of the verb. It says فالماضي, the فعل ماضي مفتوح الآخر أبدا. The فعل ماضي, as I said in one of our lessons, that the verbs, the فعل الماضي, they are all مبنية. The فعل المضارع, they are مؤرب except in two cases, and then the فعل الأمر, they are all مبنية. So when he tells you here that فالماضي مفتوح الآخر أبدا, the فعل الماضي, the ending is always مفتوح, بمعنى it is مبني على الفتح دائما. That is what he means. That it is always ending with fatha, the fi'l madi. When he says this, he will explain. Let us get there. وَالْأَمْرُ مَجْزُومٌ أَبَدًا. And the fi'l al-amr is majzoom abadan. It's always majzoom. Jamil. So the fi'l al-madi is mabniyun ala al-fath. And then the fi'l al-amr is majzoomun abadan. What will some say? They will say it is mabniyun ala ma yujzamu bihi. Mabniyun ala ma yujzamu bihi mudari'uhu. I think that is how it's supposed to be put. The fi'l al-amr, they will say it is mabniyun ala ma yujzamu bihi mudari'uhu. So the mudari', how it is made majzoom, the amr will be mabniyun ala dhalik. So if the mudari, you say mudari'un majzoom wa alamatu jazmihi as-sukun, when you form the amr of that verb, you say fi'l al-amr mabniyun ala sukun. When the mudari is majzoomun wa alamatu jazmihi hazf an-nun, then the amr will also be fi'l al-amr mabniyun ala hazf an-nun. Likewise, if the mudari is majzoomun wa alamatu jazmihi hazf harf al-illa, then when you come to the fi'l amr, you say mabniyun ala hazfi harf al-illa. So they say the fi'l al-amr is mabniyun ala ma yujzamu bihi. So here he says wal amru majzumun abadan. Says wal mudari ma kana fi awwalihi ihda zawaid al-arba'a ihda zawaid al-arba'a allati yajma'uha qawluka anaytu wa huwa marfu'un abadan. He says the fi'l mudari is the verb that has one of the ahruf al-mudara, the alif, nun, yaita. When you say anaytu, you gather all the ahruf al-mudara. Fi'l mudari must definitely have one of these letters before it. And he says wa huwa marfu'un abadan. It is always marfu'. Hatta yadkhulu alayhi nasibun aw jazim. So with the fi'l mudari, there's a caveat. It's not just marfu'un abadan. It is marfu' until a jazim or a nasib comes into or precedes it. When a nasib, which is an, lan, kay, hatta, lam, ta'lin, and all those things, when they precede a fi'l mudari, they make it mansub. When the jazim, lam, lamma, lam al-amr, and all that, la and nahiya, when they precede a fi'l mudari, they make it majzumun. And so fi'l mudari will be marfu so long as none of this precedes it. The moment one of these precedes it, the ruling changes. So what you pick from here, even before they explain, is that fi'l madi is mabniyun ala al-fathi abadan, and then fi'l al-amr is mabniyun ala ma yujzamu bihi mudari'uhu, and then the fi'l mudari is marfu'un hatta yadkhula alayhi an-nasib aw al-jazim. Says حكم الفعل الماضي البناء على الفتح الظاهر أو المقدر. فعل الماضي, the ruling is that it is مبني على الفتح, and this fatha can be muqaddar or zahir. And he will show you where it comes as zahir and where it comes as muqaddar. Now, before we read this, let me clarify something. The author of التحفة السنية, he has gone with the view that fi'l al-madi is mabniyun ala al-fathi abadan. So, however it ends, he will tell you it is mabniyun ala al-fath. If the fatha is not showing, he will tell you that the fatha is muqaddar. Tell you that mabniyun ala al-fath al-muqaddar. But other schools of thought, they go with the view that while you have something like dhahabu, they will say it is mabniyun ala al-dhamma, and they will give you the reason that litisalihi bi wawil jama'a. Where it is dhahaba, they will say mabniyun ala al-fatha. Where it is zahabat, they will give you the reason. Zahabna, hunna zahabna, they will say it is mabniyun ala sukun litisalihi bi nun al-niswa. So that is how some school of thought, they go with it. Whatever vowel the verb is ending with, they will say it is mabniyun ala that particular vowel, because it is attached to this or because it is attached to that. But with this school of thought, fi'l madi is mabniyun ala al-fath. In some cases, you get it attached to a particular letter or a particular damir. This damir causes the vowel to change. And so the vowel you are getting, or the damir you are getting, is damir arid. It is caused by the circumstance, yani munasaba, but it is not the actual vowel. And we will understand that. So he says that حكم الفعل الماضي البناء على الفتح الظاهر أو المقدر. Then he says أما الفتح الظاهر ففي الصحيح الآخر. Where you see the الفتح الظاهر, it is in the الفعل الماضي الصحيح الآخر. جميل. وكذلك في كل ما كان آخره واوا أو ياء نحو ذهب سافر رحل رضي سقي. So he says that the fi'l ماضي, it is مبني على الفتح if the ending is صحيح, يعني if the ending is not ألف واو or ياء. You see الفتح الظاهر. And then he says, and every other verb that ends with واو or ياء. So ما كان صحيح الآخر and that which ends with واو ياء. You know واو ياء is حروف الإلة. And so basically the fi'l ماضي that does not end with alif, it is the number one condition. You find the ending being مبني على الفتح الظاهر. And then he says أما الفتح المقدر فهو على ثلاثة أنواع. The فتح المقدر, it is in three cases or three types. ما كان آخره ألفا. So when you have the verb, the past tense, and the past tense ends with alif. So something like da'a, something like nama, saha, verbs like that. You know that you say jara, jim fatha, ra fatha, and then alif. The alif, you don't see the fatha, but in the sarf, you learn that the wasn't is fa'ala. In that case, it means that there is fatha on the lamul fi'l, which is the alif here. But it is muqaddar. It is a perceived vowel. It is an imagined vowel. It is not physical. Jamil. So when you have ma kana akhiruhu alifan, when the verb, past tense verb ends with alif, then the alamatul bina, which is fatha here, will be muqaddar. And so he gives us example. Da'a, ata, جميل. says وفي هذه الحال يكون الفعل الماضي مبنيا على الفتحة المقدرة على الألف منع من ظهورها التعذر. Fatha, as we already told you, it is impossible for it to take a vowel. And so we say منع من ظهورها التعذر. The fatha wasn't able to show because of impossibility. It's impossible for it to show. جميل. ويكون الفتح مقدرا للمناسبة في حالة الفعل الماضي الذي اتصلت به واو الجماعة نحو كتبوا درسوا. So when the fi'l الماضي is attached to واو الجماعة, then it becomes the last letter of the verb will take dhamma because of the wow, to match the munasaba of the wow. We learned that when you have a noun and you attach the noun to a ya'il mutakallim, the noun must end with kasra because of the munasaba of that particular ya'i. So I'll say kitabi jamilun. Even though kitab is mubtada, I'll say kitabi jamilun. And then in i'rab, I'll say kitab mubtada marfu'un wa alamat rafihi ad-dhamma al-muqaddara ala al-ba' or ala ma qabla al-ya'i. You can say it in this any of these cases. Ala ma qabla ya'i al-mutakallim. منع من ظهورها اشتغال المحل بحركة المناسبة. جميل. So in the same vein, when you have something like katabu, originally the verb should be kataba and the waw al-jama'a and alif. But waw al-jama'a, you can't pronounce it because it's a mad. So you can't have kataba and the waw al-jama'a and the alif. You have to come katabu. Okay. Not every verb goes on this. We have verbs that sometimes the pronunciation, I think in our surf we saw something like that. Okay. Where you have the verb ending with fatha and the waw al-jama'a, where we do the hazful lam. In the surf lessons, I think we saw this. Jamil. And then he says, أو يكون الفتح مقدرا لدفع كراهة توالي أربع متحركات وذلك في حال اتصال الفعل الماضي بضمير رفع متحرك. جميل. When you have also a ضمير الرفع, you have a verb like درس. You want to bring it with تاء فاعل, so it can be تاء مضمومة, تاء مفتوحة, تاء مكسورة. So you want to say maybe درست. You want to say darastu. So ta would have a dhamma. So let's say you make the sin, you keep the fatha, and you add the tau dhamma. You would have darasatu. Jamil. And he's telling you that karahati in Arabia, there is that karahati tawali arba'i mutaharrikat. In Arabia, we don't fancy that you have 4 letters. All of them are having vowel. Whether fatha, kasra, dhamma. It shouldn't all have, there is sukun should separate the 4 vowels. We don't want to have a line of 4 letters with all having vowels. Sukun should come in somewhere to break that. So there is that karaha. We dislike that in Arabic language. Or let me say that they dislike that. So when it happens that you come into contact with ta'ul fa'il, then the fi'l will be, fi'l madi will be mabniyun ala al-fath al-muqaddari ala akhir al-fi'l, because منع من ظهورها كراهة توالي متحركات, كراهة توالي 4 متحركات. So in a case where you have الضمائر المتحركة تا, تي, تو, تم, نا, تما, تنا, you have all these pronouns coming to attach to a verb. So you want to say كتبتن, you can't say كتبتن. We don't want to have كتبت, 4 harakat. We don't want to have that. So we bring the sukun on the back, katabtunna. We want to have a sukun somewhere so that we can flow. And so in this case, it is muqaddar lidaf'i karahati tawali 4 mutaharrikat. Because we dislike that we have 4 mutaharrikat. When it comes into contact with domir al-mutaharrik, then we end the fi'l with a sukun, or we end it with a fath muqaddar. We do takdir of the fath. Jamil. So you have something like darastu, darasta, darasti, darastum, darastunna, darasna, darasna, darastuma. Jamil. So this is basically the ruling for the fi'l al-madi. I don't want to pile it all up in this lesson. If not, there are nothing much. But then what I will do is that we will just keep the ruling hukm al-fi'l al-madi for this particular lesson, and then in our next lesson we will look at the hukmu fi'l al-amri, and then in the next lesson we will look at hukmu al-mudari. Jamil. That is how we are going to do it so that it doesn't become too much. Let me brush it up before we close so that we get things clear. The fi'l al-madi per this school of thought, and it's a very strong ideology. Some for ease, Jamil, some they go with the tasheel, yani make it easy. So if it is katabu, they will just say fi'l madi mabniyun ala dhamma litisalihi biwaw al-jama'a. Say katabtu fi'l madi mabniyun ala sukun litisalihi bi ta'ul fa'il. They go like that. But this school of thought that we are learning in التحفة السنية, yani we are learning in الآجرومية, it tells us that the fi'l madi is always mabniyun ala al-fath, and they make sense, because originally the verb is kataba. But you realize that when it comes into contact with some pronouns, there are reasons why the ba doesn't, the fatha cannot show. So when you have the verb coming into contact with waw al-jama'a, the waw requires a dhamma. So you have to give the dhamma. So this is a munasaba. So the munasaba prevents the fatha from showing. Then you say katabu. And then you have the verb coming into contact with ta'ul fa'il, or coming into contact with domir mutaharrik, whether tu, tum, ta, ti, tunna, na, and all that. So you want to say katabana, kataba plus na. You have to say katabna, because we hate that we have 4 letters all having vowels. We need to have a sukun somewhere. So this as well, due to the reason that the fact that we hate the continuous 4 letters with vowels, Jamil, we have to bring sukun in there. That is why we have katab. So it means that the sukun is a haraka arida or damir shakl arid. It's a diacritic that is coming due to this particular reason. يعني دفع كراهة التوالي 4 متحركات. And then also when you have the verb ending with alif, jara, nama, and all that. Alif, we learned that it is the weakest of the weak letters or sick letters, and so it can take any letter. So for this reason, للتعذر, we don't give it the fatha. So fatha is muqaddar in these 3 cases: when the verb ends with alif, or when the verb ends with comes into contact with waw al-jama'a, or the verb comes into contact with damir mutaharrik. Jamil, damir mutaharrik, and so we avoid this. So basically this is it. Aside this, the fi'l madi will be mabniyun ala al-fathi al-zahir. I hope it is clear to this extent. So basically with this, you can do an i'rab of every fi'l madi that you meet. Almost, let me say 99.9%, because there are some verbs that you meet like jarau. You meet them like this, you realize that the sarf, the lam al-fi'l has fallen, and so there is some problems in the i'rab, inshallah. Till we meet again on our next lesson, where we'll be looking at the hukm al-fi'l al-mudari'. Have very good Arabic time. Don't forget to revise. If there is anything that you do not understand, kindly call my attention. Let's clarify things together. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.